there's a couple of things here that I'm super pumped about. And I think the first thing that I want to say to you is congratulations, because if I, from what I understand about your career, and I'm no creepy stalker, but if I were to reverse engineer like where we're at, it's like, okay, you are the CEO of SmartMarketer, which is so cool. And I mean, like, anybody who's anybody in the marketing world knows who Ezra Firestone is, and of course, know who you are. So, CEO of SmartMarketer, um, VP at Digital Marketer, intern at Digital Marketer, hospitality business, like bourbon distillery, and then what I'm picturing is like sitting on a porch in Kentucky eating a hot brown.
I love it. You're not too far off.
So, first of all, because I have a lot, I'm growing a connection base in Kentucky. First thing I have to ask you is, what the heck is a hot brown, and should I try one the next time I'm there?
You absolutely should try one. Honestly, I've only had a few in my life, but in my mind, it's like I think it's ham and cheese and some
Oh,
sort
okay.
of breaded substance. Like it's really unhealthy. But people in Kentucky tend to like it. It's on a lot of menus at restaurants. So I think you should definitely try it.
I learned a mistake really quickly the last time I was in Kentucky. It was actually the first time I was there earlier in 2019. And I was looking at a map and I'm like, and I made a comment. I think I was in a restaurant. I was with my colleague and I'm like, but like, is this the South? Oh man. Like you heard
Mm.
all the ambient noise in the restaurant just like stopped. And it was like, dude,
Oh.
we are South. And I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm just asking based on what I saw on a map. Like, so
Yeah,
I
you,
learned, do
you
not.
almost started a riot. You almost started a riot. What's funny is as the country is reopening, due to coronavirus, I live in Amsterdam, so I'm not as well versed on this, but I'm pretty sure they've grouped states into certain sections. And, I don't know. The sentiment is that that's how this operation is happening. And so Kentucky was lumped into the Midwest section.
Ooh.
And I logged on to Facebook one morning to lots of angry family members and friends who definitely feel as though Kentucky is the South. I mean, look, if you look at a map, it could definitely be the Midwest. But if you look at the culture and the personality and just what runs, true and deep there, it definitely has Southern values and Southern hospitality. So that's why people get so defensive.
Yeah, I like when I heard the
And
shotgun
probably
like
is my
cock, I was like,
favorite thing
whoa.
about Kentucky.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Kentucky is like a big hug. There are lots of great things about Kentucky, so it's definitely the South.
I thought it was so funny. I have kids. I have three kids, a 10-year-old and well now 9-year-old. And we were like, you know what, we're gonna. So I'm in Alberta, Canada, to just to put this into context. And we're like, let's put them in baseball. They seem to be enjoying baseball, so we put them in baseball. And we thought, hey, we'll put them in baseball because the coach is going to kind of be on them a little bit, like, hey, let's go, swing for the ball, like all these sorts of things. No, it was like a kid out in the outfield doing the floss, picking daisies, and the coach is just being like, okay, better luck next time. I was like, what is this? So I go and visit Kentucky. My colleague goes, he says to me, look, you don't have to come, but my kids are in baseball. We're going to the game tonight. So you can go back to the hotel or you can come check it out. It's totally up to you. And I'm like, oh, what the heck? I'll go and hang out with the family and get to know you guys a little bit more. I'm not kidding you, Molly. I thought I was afraid. I showed up, dude, and it was like,
Was it intense?
holy, I had never seen anything like this in my entire life. I don't even think the
Sports
major
are
leagues.
life. Sports are life, and I think a lot of that is because there aren't. I don't think there are any professional sports in Kentucky, period. No, there are a few in Cincinnati, which is right over the river to the north.
Right.
Over the river to the north. I really sound like a Kentuckian. But I think that plays into it. I mean, that there's a huge love for college sports,
Yeah.
Kentucky and Louisville.
Right.
But yeah, I grew up in a very competitive sports environment. I played soccer growing up, and my dad played football. Our entire school system was very competitive when it comes to sports. And I think you find that all over the state.
I realized how afraid I could be of people, like of parents. And these people are my age, but they were like, "What the heck you doing? You ran to first base in 5 seconds last time. You got to do it in 3." And I'm like, "This kid's 7."
Yeah, it's
It was
intense. It's
intense.
intense.
And you know
Yeah.
what though? I Part of me wishes that that was the case, because kids are going to grow up in I think an increasingly competitive environment. And I mean, this is my shallow attempt at a segue into social media. Um, but I do think it is interesting because everything is so competitive these days. There's nowhere you can turn where there isn't some semblance of, if you don't compete, you will not stand out. Um,
Yeah, and I mean, I think for me, I'm glad that I had those experiences because that is ingrained in me in some way and has kind of made me a self-starter, which of course helps in entrepreneurship or, any other aspect of your life. But I do think that it's something that I've had to unlearn a bit in
mm,
terms of, competitiveness is really about measuring yourself against others and sort of being ahead or being behind. And I think that it can be a great motivator, but if you continue to operate from that place throughout your career, it's going to be hard to be fulfilled because you're always
yeah.
measuring yourself off of someone else. And so I do think there is a point where a transition needs to happen. And for me, it's like, I guess I'm competing against myself or, becoming the best person I can be and trying less to compare. So I just wanted to point that out because that's a really big lesson that I've learned the past few years.
I love that too. I mean, we see it so much in the retail car business. We see it all the time. I mean, they get a monthly report showing how they stack up to the dealership next to them.
Oh
And I mean,
yeah.
those reports are so void of many things that I think are much more essential than just whatever that KPI is getting passed back to me. I mean, like,
Absolutely.
I don't know what the context of the culture of that number one organization is.
Hmm.
Like, maybe they're doing good from numbers, but maybe it's just a complete slave driver environment
Yeah.
where your team
Like our,
would, toss you off a cliff at first chance, or
totally.
versus maybe you're number 10 on the list and your numbers don't look as good, but you've got a team of employees who would lay down on train tracks for you.
Yes. Yeah. And that is where true fulfillment comes from. And I can tell you that firsthand. And it's one of the biggest reasons that I decided to become a part of SmartMarketer. The tagline of the company is serve the world unselfishly and profit. And, Ezra founded this company with that meaning behind it, that vision, and has really held true to it in terms of hiring and the products that have been created and just the message and the information that we've put out there. So yeah, I don't think there's anything more important than that in business, and I love that you brought that up because the measuring stick that we use as entrepreneurs generally is revenue or is in some way tied to money. And I think it's important for us to start talking about the other aspects too, because those are truly what matter, in my opinion,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to feeling good about what you're doing in the world, which is what this is really about. Eventually, money really, it's not going to make you happy. And I
Yeah,
think
true.
most people listening have figured that out.
And you know what? I mean, like, my kids don't know how much money I make, or how much money I
Mm-mm,
don't make. It has zero bearing on
mm-mm.
what brings them joy, comfort, safety. And now there is kind of the other side of this, because there are people out there. I mean, like Grant Cardone's one of them, who is like, yeah, money never made you happy, but it never made you unhappy, like, either. And it's like, well, I get it, but I love, I think one of the reasons why your message resonates with me is because I believe so deeply in the fact that, but what do I want? Like, what is life
Mm-hmm.
supposed to look like for me? What do I want it to look like?
Mm.
My wife and I talk about it all the time, which is, we love, she's a hairdresser, by the way, so she gets the scoop. She gets the DL on so many people's
I'm
lives.
sure the gossip, the drama.
Oh, the drama. And I know she's had a particularly heavy psychology day when I just come home from the studio, and she gives me a big hug, and she'll just say, like, thank you so much for our completely boring life. And I'm like, it is,
Oh,
it is kind of boring, but I think that's her way of saying thank you for stability, because like we are super
of course.
chill. We like,
Yeah.
it doesn't take a lot to please us. We run like as an organization, we run super lean. And I love what you were
Hmm.
saying, like to your point about when times were good just a few months ago, it is so easy for us to puff our feathers and be like, look, we had a Series A funding round and we raised $100 million and we just hired 700,000 more people and we're going to
Hmm.
do 8 billion in revenue in this year and blah, blah, blah. And now look what's happening. The going got tough and they fired everybody. Now there's all these people, like United States unemployment,
Of course.
25 million.
Hmm.
You look at Disney, who's like, well, we lost about 1.8 billion this quarter alone. We're, crap. And it's like, it's funny how unsexy the numbers became when things got a little bit tight. Um,
Yeah, but a lot of that is really on the educators in this space. That is the responsibility of the leaders in our market. And the reason that there is such an obsession with money and having a seven figure, 8 figure, 9 figure, we're going to 10x stuff, we're going to scale, specifically in the digital marketing industry. The reason it is that way is because, nothing against Grant Cardone, but people like Grant, that is the message they're putting out there. So I think that's something that we all need to look at, and something Ezra and I feel passionate about, putting out a different message that allows people to measure themselves in a different way, that more so reflects like, what is my gift? We all have certain strengths, certain gifts. There is a reason we were attracted to entrepreneurship or whatever it is that you're doing. So if you are in service of that and doing that, the money will come, right? And that feels good because you are fulfilling your purpose. But if the obsession is always monetary, the fulfillment will never come. You will always be unfulfilled because you're optimizing for something that, I mean, yes, money can buy you comforts, money can get you out of bad situations, money can definitely buy you distractions, but money can also be a huge distraction, and it can be a huge stress. I know that as I've made more money in my life, it has become a bit more stressful in a way. And I know a lot of business owners that have been so obsessed with scale, and then they get to that number or that place that, that they've been shooting for, that is the promised land as laid out by so many people, and they're even more unhappy than they were when their business was at $1 million a year or $500,000 a year,
yeah.
when times were a lot simpler and when they were able to be a lot leaner. So yeah, sorry, kind of went down a rabbit hole there, but
No,
I
that's
just feel
totally
really
cool.
passionate about that because, there's nothing wrong with making money. I'm not here to be like, woo, we shouldn't make money and like this is all about doing what you love. Like,
Sure.
no, I love both sides of the coin. I just see the pendulum is very much swung in the other way right now. And I also, as I said, that a huge responsibility. Us as educators, we are very much responsible for that.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it's true too. I mean, like, so I moved to, I was in British Columbia, Canada, which is like, let's go surfing. It's wine country in Canada. It's all those sorts of things. I moved to Alberta, which is the third largest distributor of energy, oil. So we live out in a suburb of Edmonton. It's where like all the oil executives live. So we see these massive acreages. We see these massive
mm,
houses. We like, 12,000, 15,000 square foot homes, gorgeous, like absolutely gorgeous. But what's interesting is when I moved here, my sentiments have shifted in that because I think there's everybody grows up a little bit with this like, oh man, it would be awesome to be able to afford that house and to do that
whatever
and
you
go
want.
right. The longer I live here and the more I focus on the culture of my organization, the culture of my family, what matters most, focusing my attention and my energy, my talents, my capabilities on what I really believe matter most. At first, the maybe the hard thing that I think a lot of people, people that follow Gary Vee, people that follow Grant Cardone, people that follow, all of the influencers out there, I think one of the hardest pieces of the whole puzzle is them as an individual admitting to themselves that maybe I don't actually want to get to a point where I can buy a private jet, and then B,
Mm-hmm.
that's okay.
Yes.
Right? And I've gotten to that point where I'm like, whoa, this is weird. I've only lived here for just shy of 3 years. And I went from it would be so awesome to own a 15,000 square foot home to, you know what? If I'm making that kind of money, I would rather just have like a nice house that I'm stoked about. But then I wanna do the Molly Pittman thing. I want to have a flat in Amsterdam. I want to have a flat in
Yes.
Copenhagen. Like I want to have these
Yeah.
places that I could just go to and visit.
Oh, you want
Um,
experiences.
I want experiences. And at first it was really difficult because I'm such a type A, like go, 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 go. I had to realize I'm never satisfied when I get to that thing. Like here's a perfect example. Um, I go from dealing with severe suicidal depression for the better part of a decade in my 20s
Mm.
to overcoming that, to learning how to deal with it, to focusing on positive, to shifting my mindset from the lack to gratitude to abundance to, just being who I am today. Coming out of that being like, there's so many things that I've talked myself out of doing that I'm now going to do, right? I've got this new revive. So I write a book. Where is it? I'm pointing to my Napoleon Dynamite figures. I write a book. It becomes a #1 bestseller, something that I never thought I would ever be able to achieve. And
Wow.
I skipped right past it. I was like, oh, cool.
Mm.
Great. Now on to the next thing. Like never satisfied
Yeah.
with where you are. To your point,
I resonate with that.
I'm making more money now than I ever thought I would make in my entire life. Um,
Hmm.
but I don't, there's something about me where it's funny. Like Mike Myers talks about this in relation to his time on SNL, where he goes, I wish I would have just enjoyed it a little bit more when I was there because I
Yes.
was always like, the next skit's got to be funnier. I need
Hmm.
some sort of feedback on how great this is.
And then it's over.
And then it's over and you're looking back and he goes, well, my biggest regret about SNL is that I just didn't stop for a minute and really enjoy what I was doing there. And so I
Yeah.
see a lot of that in myself. And I see, I think a lot of people struggle with this as well, where they're like, oh, well, it's easy for Michael to say he operates 4 companies and they're successful and they're debt free and they're privately held and they're blah, 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 blah. And he's living life on his terms and he overcame mental illness and um, and it's like, well, no, like you have to just get to a point where you are okay admitting to yourself that what you really want in life does not align with what Gary Vee and Grant Cardone preach, or even what maybe Michael or
Hmm.
Molly Pittman preach. Because like Molly Pittman is like people go, well, holy crap, it is so awesome. Molly lives in Amsterdam. I'd love to live in Amsterdam. Okay, we'll do it because like that's what she did. She did it.
Yeah.
She just did it.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, wow. I resonate with everything you just said. I actually have a book coming out in a few weeks called Click Happy. And
Mm.
it's kind of about this topic, actually. It's a little bit like what I wish someone would have handed me 10 years ago before I got in the industry, and a lot about just the huge opportunity that there's still a huge opportunity online, and people don't understand that. Like, we're in such the early phases, but a lot of the book is about my experience in my career, as you were talking about, and lessons that I've learned. There's like sort of 9 more life lessons that I've learned book. And, I think what you said about enjoying the now, that is one of the biggest lessons I've learned in the last few years, because for me, it was always about the next step, like you said. And there is no place you're going to get, like I said earlier, where you're like, okay, I did it. I mean, there are milestones along the way, but if you can appreciate the journey, like, for example, a big goal for me has been, of course, I take weekends and I take time off, but I want to get to a place where I love what I'm doing so much that I have an equal level of enthusiasm on a Monday as I do a Sunday,
Right.
because that definitely hasn't been the case my whole life. And
Sure.
so, I'm pretty much there right now, and that feels so good. So it's like, if you can, just like you would set a goal for wanting to grow a business to $20 million or whatever it is, just like you would set a goal and steps to achieve that, do that for ways that you want to feel. Something that Ezra Firestone, my business partner, we mentioned him earlier, I don't have the exact quote, but he always says something to the effect of appreciating it, or you can't get to where you want to go if you don't appreciate what you have here and now. And
Mm.
it's so true. And so, practicing that, and creating goals of, I want to feel this way, not just I want to have this much money, but I want to feel a certain way, or I want to show up like this in relationships, or, I want to feel like this when I'm working on a Sunday. I don't want to, I don't want to dread Monday coming. I don't want the Sunday scaries. If you can make those just as much of a priority, that's how you're able to have a truly rich life, in all aspects.
It's this weird, I don't even know what I would call it, like conundrum maybe of, as entrepreneurial people, and I think a lot of people in the industry that I'm in, the industry you're in, have a challenge with, is shutting their brain off, or giving themselves permission to, well, first of all, the only way your brain shuts off is when you're dead. So that's the first
Yes.
thing. But dealing with, oh man, like I want to go on a family walk on Sunday, and I need to give myself permission to do that because I know I absolutely put in my best effort from Monday to Friday, or Monday to Saturday, or vice versa. I had enough, like, I don't want to say balance, because like that, but I was able to prioritize the way my days flowed, to the degree that if I do need to work on a Sunday, I'm not feeling
Mm.
bad about that on the reverse angle, like from a family perspective, because I know that I was spending quality time with my wife and children every day this week.
Yeah, absolutely. And, slow is fast in business. Really, it truly is. And whenever I've been successful in projects or with companies or seeing my students, when you are, and a lot of this happens because of people that we're following or us trying to reach these crazy monetary goals. There are many reasons that people do this, but most of it is competition. But we start operating out of fear or scarcity, like we got to catch up, or we're behind. And so that causes you to be frantic, and you to kind of put that energy out there, and that usually doesn't go well for people, and especially because they're not happy. So I think a big takeaway for people is, like, truly slow is fast. If you are playing the long game in a business, this is not a race. Like, we're really not racing. There's room for everybody. And so if you go too fast and you burn yourself out, then what are you going to do? That's something that I've gone through in the past. So for me, it's not about rewarding myself. Okay, Molly, you did all this awesome stuff in business and you were super productive this week. You get this time off, as a
Right.
reward.
Right.
It's like that time happened no matter what. I mean, yeah, of course, there are sometimes on the weekends or during these days that are set aside for personal time that I might have to work, but I always do balance that out, because if I don't, if those boundaries aren't really strict and tight and stable, that is when I can become a bit frantic or operate out of fear, and then that leads to burnout, and truly nothing gets done, and it's not sustainable. So I would just err on the side of caution for people that feel like the grind, the hustle. Like, yeah, there is a time to work hard and really dig in. But if you're being strategic and you're working smart, and you know how to prioritize, there really is never a time in your career where you should be hustling to a point that it affects your health, or that it affects your relationships.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've gone through. That's something I've seen so many other people go through. And again, a lot of that is on us as leaders in the entrepreneurial community, speaking up about that, speaking up about, for me, I try to take Fridays off. So that's something cool that I like to do, have 3 solid days that, yeah, of course I'll do some correspondence, or, I'll chat with students maybe, but I'm trying to turn my brain off, and really protect myself, because we don't realize the amount of stress that it brings when we work like that. I've been there working 80-hour weeks, never put it down, wake up with the phone in my hand, like turned on 24 hours a day. And like, yeah, it accelerated my career, but it also did a lot of damage to me, like my health and my mental health. And so I just like to put that out there for people as a warning, and also for anybody who has gone through it. Like, slow is truly fast. And it is a long-term game, and you've got to keep that in mind. And there is absolutely room for everybody. So you are not racing against anybody. And of course, you need to follow through. You need to work hard. You got to do the work. That's a no-brainer. But, the hardest part nowadays in our culture is actually doing the work on yourself. Most students or people that I work with that I see that are having a hard time, it's not that they're a bad business person. It's not that they don't know what they're doing. Their personal life is just so out of whack, and their energy is so out of whack that they are self-sabotaging, or as a whole company, they're self-sabotaging. So hopefully that's helpful for you guys.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is huge. And I was just saying pre-show that I was driving to the studio and I'm like, Molly gets asked 18 zillion of the same questions about Facebook ads. I'm sure we're going to cover a few of those in a minute, and advertising best practices. But I was like, ultimately, I want to have a different conversation with her, and I had no clue it was going to go in this direction. But I'm so glad that it is, because I feel so like enriched right now. And I know this is something that my listeners need to hear more of. I mean, one of the running jokes in the auto industry is they'll post a meme on Facebook of like clearly like a 90-year-old man or woman, and they're like, I don't know what everyone's, it's like, I don't know what everyone's talking about. I'm 36 and feel great, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, you're wearing busy as a badge, and there's certainly the narrative of hustle, grind, go for it.
It's unnecessary.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, what I'm really picking up from what you were saying is, like, we're playing a long game here. That's probably the one thing that I like Gary Vee talks about is like, hey, you've got time. You're 26, you've got time. You're 30, you've got time. You're 50, you've got time. And I don't think a lot of people realize that if I am playing the long game, then what you were just saying is like, yeah, working those 80-hour weeks helped my career in the moment. But it also kind of sets you back because of what you said, like a lot of what it put you through, what you had to deal with. Like, I don't know what the impact of that will be 35 years from now.
Yeah. Oh, it's crazy. And I mean, that happened 2.5 years ago, and I'm finally feeling more normal from it. So like everything always evens out in the end. And yeah, I love talking about this stuff because this is really, like I said, a huge missing piece that I see for entrepreneurs right now. And I'm actually, with my book, Click Happy, is a free course is included called Balanced Being, which is funny. You said balanced earlier. And it's myself and Ezra and a few members of the team talking about this type of stuff, like communication. How do you deal with your finances? How do you deal with your team? How do you deal with your interpersonal relationships? Like, what about your purpose? And with business, all the tactical, of course, I love Facebook ads. I love digital marketing. And I've been on hundreds of podcasts and blog posts and courses talking about that stuff. And that's important. But this side of it, I definitely feel, at least right now, like I feel like I should be talking about it because so many people are struggling with it.
This is something I could talk about every day. In fact, it's funny because the last time you were on the podcast, it was very like the whole purpose of the podcast was very what's the word I want to use?
Tactical.
Tactical. It was so focused on tactics. Like, okay, step one, what can we do? Step two, step three, what can they take
Right.
away? But I realized like, yes, there's a time and a place for a tactic. But tactics mean nothing if you don't have a bigger strategy. Like, what strategy
Yeah.
are you following? And then strategy kind of, for me, flows into, but what do I want? Like, why would I even want to grow my business? And a lot of people I don't think
Hmm.
can even answer that question. Like, why do I want to grow my business?
No.
What's funny about that is as things started to happen, and I mean, obviously, I'm almost sick of talking about the pandemic at this point because it was like so heavy
Yeah.
for so long. But I mean, context wise, one of the things that I think is interesting is what came out of this in conversations with my team is that a real driver for us to want to grow our business is so that the next time something like this happens, and it will, and by the way, there's also issues happening all the time. Every day there's issues. There's things that we can be doing to serve the world, to serve people. I'm like, dude, I think the only reason I really care about growing my business to that 10x level over the next 5 years or decade is because the next time something catastrophic like this happens, I want to be in a position to go, you're taken care of, you're taken care of, you're taken care of. Like, I look at all these companies that are like, and I can't think of any off the top of my head, ironically, but we know there are some who in the last recession were nothing, grew to multi-billions of dollars over their last decade or 12 years, 20 years, whatever. And now they're like, and we're opening up $1 billion fund to help, people who have been whatever. Or you look at famous chefs like Guy Fieri or however you say his name, and he's like, I'm good, so I'm going to start a fund for people that have lost jobs in the hospitality business, and he's raised like $20 million or something crazy like that. And I'm
Yeah.
like, now we're talking because it's like, yeah, I can do good in a one-to-one fashion for my clients, directly proportionate to the work that I do for them or the service I provide. But there is this bigger piece that I think so often gets used as a publicity stunt, which is the real ability a company can have to support and serve the
Absolutely. And
community.
a lot of people put that in a box of like, well, I'm not a nonprofit or I
Right.
already donate to charity. And they think of it in that way. But that's just one small piece of it. That's almost like the extreme piece of what you're talking about in a way.
Yeah.
Like there are ways that you can profitably serve your customers. So for example, let's look at SmartMarketer. I mean, at the core, why SmartMarketer exists is because we all love to nerd out about marketing and business, as you can probably tell. And there's nothing that makes us more excited than someone going through one of our courses or reading, consuming our content, going and implementing and growing their business and being able to hire more people. Or students have told me, hey, I was able to send my kids to college, or I went and built this cool thing in Africa, or, whatever they are empowered to do, I'm giving them a skill set, thousands of people, a skill set to go get their mission out there or go get their purpose out there, or for them to go help other people. But I'm still making money from it.
Yeah.
I'm still making money from it, but I'm providing an actual transformation for them. And I think that that is the missing piece. I mean, that's the missing piece in most people's marketing, is that they don't have a transformation to provide the end user, and so the marketing message isn't that strong. So if that is the first place that you start and you really feel passionate about that, then that to me is just such an amazing business. And again, it's different than, one of my goals is maybe in the future to own some sort of like dog kennel or dog shelter, because I
Mm.
really love dogs. But that's more in the like nonprofit project category that I mentioned earlier. Like you can still be a profitable business that scales or whatever you're looking for from it, and truly serve people first.
Yeah. I love that so much. You mentioned something earlier I want to just dig into a little bit. So there's Smart Marketer. There's 18 zillion. Don't fact check me on the number, but there's a lot of other info, education, training, marketing, right? Like everybody these days is a marketer. It's like you
Yeah.
open up uh, a box of whatever, Cracker Jacks, and it's like, you are now a marketer. And it's like, oh, sweet. Right. And everybody calls himself a
Yeah.
marketer. And LinkedIn's profiles, everybody's like, I help marketers become better marketers on marketers. It's like Russian nesting dolls of marketing. And
Yeah.
and so there's a lot out there. And you mentioned, which I love because I believe it so deeply, like this is not a race and there's more than enough for everybody. How does Molly, like, how do you navigate? Because I'm sure you see it just like I see it. You're scrolling through Facebook and you're like, oh, there's another competitor. Or like,
Hmm.
oh, there's another company that's saying they do the exact, like from at face value, sounds like they do the exact same thing as me. Because I'll tell you, and you know this, I mean,
Yeah.
in the automotive industry specifically, it is like dog eat dog, or at least it can be that
Yeah.
way. It's so competitive.
I
It's like,
mean,
oh, what is my competitor doing? Oh crap, my competitor's doing this. I
yeah.
must do this because we're fighting for the same. Like it's just very bloody water. So what do you say to, like, how do you navigate that? Um,
Yeah.
how do you keep
Well,
your focus and just say, well, that is what it is. We're doing this.
love that question because this does happen to all of us. And first off, competition in a market is great because that shows you that there is a need. If someone comes to me with an idea, I'm the person that my friends call me with the crazy business ideas. And the first thing I do is Google to see if something like that idea exists. And if it doesn't, I'm actually weary of even moving forward with it. Of course, there
Mm,
is a time and place for a novel idea, and I'm not knocking it. But, for me, if there is competition in the market, that's awesome because that shows me like they have proof of concept. They've gone first.
right.
And so I'm taking less risk. So I just wanted to first put that out there. Because I think that a lot of people don't think of it that way. They're like, oh, I've
Sure.
got to be the first or the only. And then something else that I want to point out that I see so many of my friends and students struggle with this. And I'm going to use my friend as an example. His name is Sean, and his wife her name is Sarah Prout, and she is this like spiritual leader, like author, sells information, like really successful. I actually just bought her book at a bookstore here in Amsterdam. And so that's, sort of the market that they're in or the people that they're serving. And I also have a client and friend, Gabby Bernstein, who is also in sort of that market. Like she has held the world's longest meditation and has like 8 New York Times bestsellers. She's
Wow.
been on Oprah, like all of that. Like she does it.
Yeah.
And so Sean comes to me and he's like, hey, I saw that Gabby did this like meditation challenge or something. And I had an idea to do something like that and we were about to launch it. And so I'm just going to have to change it now because, she's already doing that. And this is so interesting. It's exactly what you're talking about. And I see this happen all the time. And so I related it back to the digital marketing industry because, as you said, we aren't shy. There's tons of competition. And, the free class or the offer I was working on at the moment was this free 7-day Facebook class. And I'm like, Sean, do you know how many other people have free, I'm sure even 7-day Facebook classes out there? And this
Yeah.
is a pretty small market.
Right.
I'm sure there's, maybe almost 100 of them. But
Yeah.
I didn't think about that at all when putting mine out there because I know that mine is unique to me. Okay. And
Right.
I think this goes back to, kind of figuring out what your gift is or what your purpose is, and realizing that different people are going to resonate with different businesses, with different humans. And so back to my friend Sean, I'm like, Sean, you absolutely can do this meditation thing. Look how many, there are thousands of people on the internet talking about meditation. There are certain people in this market that are going to resonate with Sarah's story and her experience and her personality. And for some reason, they're going to be drawn to her. Some people are going to be drawn to Gabby and her story and her experiences, even though essentially they're selling the same thing. That's just how it works. I mean, look at how many different, like, even, well, we don't need to get into religion, but yeah, I think that you're getting what I'm saying. Like, there are always subsets of the market that are going to resonate with different people for different reasons. And so there is always room, especially if there's something unique about you. You know, if you are providing that transformation, like we were just discussing, Ezra, my business partner, he owns a cosmetic and skincare brand called Boom by Cindy Joseph. And I think that his products are good, but I mean, think about how many other businesses out there online and retail are selling skincare and makeup. It is such a saturated market. But the reason he's been able to sell, you know, over $100 million the last few years in cosmetics solely through online channels and paid advertising, like 90% of this is just what we know with Facebook ads, is because he was able to overlay this message and this sort of mission and say, hey, we're pro-age. So most companies are telling you that you have wrinkles and that you need anti-age and you need to look younger and like the wrinkles gotta go, they gotta go. And we're saying, hey, we're here to celebrate you. This is the pro-age revolution, and we're celebrating women over the age of 50 and your natural beauty. And so just that positioning, even though, you know, I think the makeup's cool, but you can buy similar makeup from other products. That is the single reason, other than, you know, I think Ezra being a great marketer, that brand is successful. And so think about it. That message, they're not getting that message from L'Oreal and I mean, I could name hundreds of makeup and skincare brands, but that message attracted that part of the audience. And that's why he is so successful in one of the most saturated markets that exists. So I think it really ties back to, like, what do you bring to the table? How can you make, you know, even though everybody usually, you know, most people in their life need to buy a car, most of us multiple times. You have that to your benefit. How are you providing a unique experience that other people aren't? And like, for me, just really quick, and this is a side example, I'm not saying anybody should run out and do this. A lot of this could be catering your dealerships to certain avatars. So like, for me, being this sort of nomadic entrepreneur, which there are more of us every day as more people get online, for me, owning a car has been a real pain in the ass. So like, I thought I was going to live in Colorado, so I leased this car, and then I moved to Amsterdam, and now it's sitting in Tahoe. And like, this model does not work for me, you know? And I know a lot of my friends have the same issue. Like, could you revolutionize the industry in some way to provide, you know, a way that I could still lease or buy a car, but for my certain circumstance? And that might not be the best example, but like, how are you different, I guess, is what I'm putting out there. That is what's going to draw people to you. It's not about the market being saturated. It's, if you think the market's saturated, it's because you are acting like and operating like everybody else. So if you look like them, if you act like them, then no, you're not going to stand out. You are just going to be another dealership. So if you're willing to think out of the box and truly provide something special, that's you know, really what sets you apart.
Yeah, I love that you talk about mission, right? I mean, it's like, going back to the cosmetics, it's because this message is rooted in a mission, and that mission, like, I think about my company has a very specific mission. Your company has a very specific mission, and that is what helps us create this foundation of unique. Like, L'Oreal has their vision or their mission. Max Factor has their mission. I'm struggling for cosmetic companies at this point, but you know,
they're
what I
lame.
mean.
You know, they're lame. They're like, all the missions are the same.
So
like,
lame.
take a counter approach or something new.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like something like making car buying easy. Like, that's not fun. You know, like, for me, only really interesting thing I've ever seen happen in the car industry was CarMax. And, that's why I've pretty much only dealt with them, because they make it so easy for you.
Right.
But that's still kind of lame. Like, you're just making it easier. I don't know. I just challenge you guys to really think about Boom as an example, and how can you be that?
Well, and that's exactly it. It's like there really is no competition, because the one thing that your competitor doesn't have is you. And you are unique,
Mm-hmm.
and you have your own thoughts, and you have your own definition of success. I mean, to your point, it's why people are still out there throwing in a VHS, DVD, streaming it, however they're doing it. They're throwing in Tybo, and they're doing Tybo with whatever that dude's name is. And then there's people right next door doing Beachbody. There's people out there still rocking to Mary Hart's Shaping Up, with their leggings and their tube socks. I can't believe I remember that. But that's why there's room for all of these, because it resonates. And not forgetting this, especially as it pertains to vehicles, let's just say, I can't deny the fact that as a human being with my own flavor, tastes, ideas, feelings, all these sorts of things, that I might like the way the Honda looks, but it's just uncomfortable for me. It doesn't work for me. Or I might like the way the Silverado works, but it's just not comfortable for me. It's no different than why at this point of my life, in my late 30s, I've owned 60 or 70 pillows, because it's just I can, and by the way, I'm still on the hunt for a good pillow.
We should chat about this. I'm a pillow enthusiast also.
Okay, I could open a museum of pillows at this point. But it's there's so many factors that even go beyond the foundation of a mission. It's does this actually work for me? I'm sure there are people out there in this context that have tried Boom Cosmetics, and maybe they just don't, maybe the colors are off, or maybe they don't like the way it feels. There's elements that are beyond your control as a marketer or your control as a business, but the best, chance you have is to really clearly define your mission, your definition of success, and put that message out into the world. You're going to create the content with your message, and that message is going to find your audience and people that gravitate towards you.
And really quick, I think that people think they need to go on this huge soul journey and do all this crazy stuff to figure out their mission or their purpose. First off, I think your purpose changes over time, and usually it's a lot more obvious than you think. It's whatever feels very easy to you and that you feel passionate about. So for example, the reason that, Ezra with Boom, his business partner, Cindy Joseph, who sadly passed away last year, they had been friends since Ezra was young, because Cindy came to take classes on the commune that Ezra grew up in Hawaii. It's a long story. It's a pretty cool story. But Ezra actually moved to New York when he was 18 to play underground poker and lived at Cindy's house. And so Cindy was this model, beautiful gray hair, already sort of building a following of women that were this avatar. And Ezra saw how passionate she was for these women. And she was talking about, how, makeup, they could create makeup that was specifically for this audience. And so it's not and then of course, Ezra feels very passionate about women's rights. And of course he feels passionate about the message behind it, but it was her, it started with her. And so sometimes that's how it might show up. But for me with marketing, I have, as you explained, I worked in the bourbon industry and I've done different things, but as soon as I was exposed to digital marketing and digital business, I was hooked. It wasn't work to me. I wanted to soak it up like a sponge. And then as soon as I had enough experience, I wanted to help other people. And that feels very natural to me. It feels very easy. And so that's how I know it's right. So yeah, I just wanted to say that, because a lot of people are like, all right, I got to find my purpose or mission. Where is it? You're going to go actively
Everest.
Find it. Yeah. And it's probably already there.
Yeah, it's true. I think it's so funny. As a bit of an aside, right? So I started podcasting in the automotive industry, and I mean, people are like, wow, my kids ask me, "Are you famous?" I'm like, if fame was like what I was going after, I would not start a podcast in the automotive industry. So for
True.
starters,
Not the broadest market.
yeah. And it's funny though, because earlier in this conversation, I had mentioned like we started out one way, and then that kind of shifted, and that kind of shifted, and I realized that of myself, my big thing is this can be a tool to bring relief to an industry that is so void of like just that voice of reason, or that like that's just something
Mm.
I'm so passionate about, and so that comes through in the show. But it's funny because so many podcasters will hit me up. They're like, "Hey, dude, we're thinking about starting a car dealer podcast. Like, would you be okay with that?" I'm like, "Dude, giddy up, man.
Yeah, of
Let's
course. Like
roll."
we're on the same mission, and the
Yeah,
people like that even makes you want to like, hey, how can I help? Is usually what I say because
yeah.
we're on the same mission.
Exactly, and it just ties into, gosh, Molly, like what has been such a delightful conversation. I'm so glad that we were able to connect
Yeah,
for this.
me too.
And I'm strangely like honestly, I came into it being like, okay, we're going to talk some Facebook ads. I'm totally happy that we didn't, and I'm so happy we went down this path because it is so on mission for this every industry, right? Like everybody
Of
needs
course.
to hear more about this message and what you believe and what I believe, because I really do feel that, to your point, this is such a void concept, and it is incumbent upon us as leaders, as educators, to get this message out there to more people so that they can live the best version of their life that they want to live, like life on their terms, not, oh,
Yes.
well,
That's
we,
what matters.
we only did $1 million in revenue, so therefore we're not worth anything. It's like, shut up, you're
Mm,
awesome. So,
exactly.
you mentioned your book, so I'm super excited about that. How can those listening get in touch with you and keep up to date with the book launch and all that kind of stuff?
Yes. So as of May 25th, 2020, at clickhappy.com, you will find my book and also that free course that comes with the book about being a balanced entrepreneur. I think that'll be helpful to a lot of you guys. You can also find more of my courses and work at smartmarketer.com, also mollypittman.com. So a few websites for you to browse if you have some time. I'm most active on Instagram, so at Molly Pittman Digital, but you can also find me, my brand page on Facebook also. So those would be the best places. If you are looking for Facebook specific information, I do have a free 7-day Facebook class, as I mentioned earlier. You can just Google Molly Pittman 7-day Facebook class, Smart Marketer or something like that, and it'll definitely come up. And that's just a free class. We just ask for your email address.
Molly, you're the best. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.